The doorbell screamed at 2:17 a.m., a shrill cry slicing through the silence of my creaky old house. I bolted upright, heart pounding, the echo of that sound clawing at my nerves. Who the hell rings a doorbell at this hour? My bare feet hit the cold hardwood, and I stumbled to the window, peeling back the curtain. There she was, Claire Donovan, the untouchable CEO of Pinnacle Media, swaying on my porch like a storm-battered ship. Her tailored suit was a mess, tie loose, blouse half untucked, her auburn hair a tangled halo under the flickering porch light. Drunk. Pathetic. And yet my stomach twisted with something I hadn't felt in years, something I swore I'd buried. "Ellie, please," she slurred, her voice thick with whiskey and desperation, banging her fist weakly against the door. "I know you're there. I fucked up. I know I did." Her words broke, a sob catching in her throat, and I hated how it made my chest ache. I wanted to scream, to throw open the door and shove her off my porch, off my life. But I didn't. I stood frozen, the ghost of her betrayal burning fresh in my mind. 3 years ago, Claire was my everything, my mentor, my lover, my future. She was 34 then, all sharp edges and ambition, running Pinnacle like a queen, her dark eyes promising me the world. I was 29, a hungry journalist clawing my way up, and she saw something in me. Or so I thought. We'd spend late nights in her corner office, her laughter filling the air like champagne bubbles, her fingers brushing mine over stacks of manuscripts. I trusted her, loved her, until she tanked my career with a single lie. It was a story, a big one. I'd uncovered corruption at Pinnacle's parent company, names, dates, dollar amounts. I handed it to Claire, expecting her to champion it, to stand by me. Instead, she buried it. Worse, she leaked a doctored version to a rival outlet, painting me as a reckless liar chasing clout. My name was trashed. No outlet would touch me. I lost my job, my reputation, my fire. All because Claire chose her empire over me. Now here she was, drunk and broken, begging for forgiveness I didn't owe her. The air smelled of rain-soaked wood and her expensive perfume, the same one that used to linger on my skin. I opened the door not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see her face when I told her to go to hell. "Ellie," she whispered, her eyes glassy, searching mine like she could claw her way back into my heart. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was scared. They would have destroyed me. You destroyed me." I spat, my voice low, trembling with rage. "You don't get to show up here and cry about it." She flinched like my words were a slap. "I know. God, I know. I've hated myself every day since." Her hand shook as she reached for me, but I stepped back, the space between us a chasm of broken promises. "Then why are you here, Claire?" My voice cracked, betraying the hurt I'd locked away. The crickets chirped outside, relentless, filling the silence as she struggled to answer. Her breath hitched, a ragged sound, and I saw it, the weight of her guilt, heavy as the morning fog rolling in. "I love you," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I never stopped. The words hit like a punch, stealing my breath. I wanted to hate her, to slam the door and let her drown in her regret. But love doesn't die clean. It lingers like the smell of rain or the ache in your bones before a storm. And as I stood there, staring at the woman who'd ruined me, I wondered if I could ever let her go. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the faint hum of the TV. Claire was gone, but her jacket was draped over my porch swing, a crumpled note tucked in the pocket. "Meet me at the diner. Please. See." My hands trembled as I held it, the paper soft, worn, like she'd clutched it for hours before leaving it behind. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to care. But the diner was our place. Late-night pancakes, whispered dreams, her hand brushing mine under the table. Could I face her there, in the light of day where the truth couldn't hide? I drove through our sleepy town, the streets lined with maple trees shedding crimson leaves. The diner's neon sign buzzed faintly, a beacon of grease and nostalgia. Inside, Claire sat in our old booth, nursing a black coffee, her face pale but sober. She looked up as I slid into the seat across from her, her eyes raw, vulnerable, like the Claire I'd loved before the world tore us apart. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said, her voice steady now, though it trembled at the edges. "But I need you to know why." "Then talk," I said, folding my arms, my heart a battlefield of hope and hurt. The clatter of dishes, the low hum of conversation, the smell of bacon sizzling. It all grounded me, kept me from falling into her orbit again. But as she began to speak, her words unraveling the truth behind that day 3 years ago, I felt the ground shift beneath me. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was bigger, darker, and Claire was ready to burn it all down. Claire's hands gripped her coffee mug like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the earth. The diner's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across her face, highlighting the lines etched deeper than I remembered. She wasn't the invincible so anymore. Just a woman unraveling, her voice low and deliberate as she spoke. "They threatened my family, Ellie," she said, her eyes locked on the table, unable to meet mine. "The board at Pinnacle's parent company. They knew about your story. They knew it was true. And they told me if it went public they'd go after my mom, my sister. They had proof, screenshots, recordings of me, us." Her voice broke on that last word, a sharp crack that echoed in my chest. "Us." I leaned forward, my pulse racing. The smell of burnt toast lingered in the air, mixing with the bitter tang of her coffee. "What do you mean, us?" She finally looked up, her dark eyes glistening. "They had photos. From that weekend in Montauk. Us on the beach, at the hotel. They knew we were together and they used it. Said they'd leak it, ruin me, ruin you. I was a coward, Ellie. I chose to protect myself." The words landed heavy, each one a stone sinking into the pit of my stomach. Montauk. 2 years into our relationship, we'd escaped there for a weekend. Sun-soaked days, her laughter mingling with the crash of waves, her fingers tracing patterns on my skin as we lay in bed. It was the last time I'd felt whole. And now, to know that moment had been weaponized against us? I wanted to scream, to shatter the mug in her hands. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice was a hiss, barely controlled. The diner's chatter faded, the world narrowing to just us. The hum of the jukebox, a faint pulse in the background. "I would have fought with you. We could have faced it together." "I thought I was protecting you," she said, her voice raw, like she'd scraped it from the bottom of her soul. "If they'd leaked those photos, your career would have been over before it started. You were already fighting to be taken seriously as a queer woman in journalism. I couldn't let them make it worse." I laughed, bitter and sharp, the sound cutting through the air. "You think losing my career to them would have hurt more than you betraying me? You lied, Claire. You let them paint me as a fraud." "I know," she whispered, her fingers trembling as she reached for me across the table. I pulled back, the space between us a wound that refused to heal. I thought I could fix it later. I thought I'd find a way to make it right. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. The diner door chimed, a family shuffling in, their laughter jarring against the storm in my chest. I leaned back, my arms crossed, trying to anchor myself. So why now? Why show up at my door, drunk and pathetic, after 3 years of silence? Claire swallowed hard, her throat bobbing. "Because they're coming for me again. The board, they're planning something bigger. A merger that'll gut Pinnacle, sell it off for parts. They're burying more corruption, and I can't stay quiet anymore. I need your help, Ellie. You're the only one I trust." I stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. This wasn't just about us. It was about the truth, the same truth I'd fought for and lost. The clink of silverware, the sizzle of the grill, the faint creak of the booth beneath me. It all felt too real, too sharp, like the world was pressing in. Could I trust her again? Could I risk everything for the woman who'd broken me? "I don't know if I can do this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You hurt me, Claire. You ruined me." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me. But this isn't just about us anymore. People are going to lose their jobs, their livelihoods. You're the best journalist I know. If anyone can stop them, it's you." I wanted to walk away, to leave her sitting there with her guilt and her coffee. But the fire I'd thought was dead flickered in my chest, a spark of purpose, of rage. I'd lost everything once. Maybe this was my chance to take it back. Give me one reason, I said, my voice steady now, why I should believe a single word you say. Claire reached into her bag, pulling out a flash drive and sliding it across the table. Because I kept everything. Every email, every document, every proof of what they did. It's all here. And I'm ready to go public, no matter what it costs me. I stared at the drive, my fingers itching to grab it, to dive back into the fight I'd abandoned. The diner smelled of syrup and second chances, and as I looked into Claire's eyes, I saw the woman I'd loved, and the woman I might still love despite everything. But trust? That was a bridge we'd have to rebuild, one fragile step at a time. The flash drive sat between us, small and unassuming, but heavy with the weight of buried truths. I didn't touch it. Not yet. The diner's hum, clinking plates, the low murmur of a waitress chatting with a regular, felt like a buffer against the chaos Claire had just dropped into my lap. Her eyes, red-rimmed and pleading, held mine, and I hated how they still pulled at me, like gravity I couldn't escape. What's on it? I asked, my voice flat, betraying none of the storm raging inside. The air smelled of pancakes and stale cigarette smoke from the guy in the next booth, grounding me in the moment. Everything, Claire said, leaning forward, her hands clasped tight like she was praying. Emails between the board and the parent company. Financial records showing the payoffs. Proof they doctored your story to discredit you. It's enough to take them down, Ellie. All of them. I exhaled, a slow, shaky breath, the kind you let out when you're bracing for impact. 3 years ago I'd have killed for this. I'd have torn through those files, fueled by righteous anger, ready to burn Pinnacle to the ground. Now, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. The journalist I'd been was a ghost, replaced by a woman who wrote freelance fluff pieces to pay the bills, who avoided mirrors because she couldn't stand the defeat in her own eyes. And what's the catch? I asked, my tone sharp, cutting through the soft clatter of the diner. You don't just show up with a magic bullet after 3 years. What do you want from me? Claire's lips parted, a soft gasp escaping like I'd wounded her. I want you to do what you do best. Write the story. Tell the truth. I'll back you publicly. I'll testify, go on record, whatever it takes. I laughed, a hollow sound that made her flinch. You? Testify? The same Claire Donovan who threw me under the bus to save her corner office? Forgive me if I'm skeptical. Her face crumpled, but she didn't back down. I deserve that. But I'm not that person anymore. I've spent 3 years drowning in what I did to you. I can't undo it, but I can fight with you now. If you'll let me. The sincerity in her voice was a knife, twisting in the scar she'd left. I wanted to believe her, but trust was a currency I couldn't afford. Not yet. The jukebox kicked on, some old Springsteen song, its raw guitar chords filling the air with a yearning that mirrored my own. I leaned back, studying her, the faint tremble in her hands, the way her eyes searched mine for a flicker of forgiveness. Say I do this, I said, my fingers brushing the edge of the flash drive, cool and smooth. What happens to you? They'll crucify you. Your career, your fancy penthouse, your whole damn empire gone. Claire's jaw tightened, but her voice was steady. I don't care. I've already lost what matters most. Her eyes softened, and for a moment, I saw the Claire from Montauk, the one who'd whispered I love you against my skin as the ocean roared outside. I lost you. My throat closed, the words hitting like a tidal wave. I looked away, out the diner's window, where the morning sun painted the street gold. A kid biked past, his laughter faint, a reminder of a world that kept turning despite my pain. I wanted to hate her, to let the anger win, but love was messier than that. It clung stubborn like damp leaves on pavement. I need time, I said finally, my voice barely audible over the hum of the diner. I need to see what's on that drive. And I need to know you're not playing me again. She nodded, her relief palpable, though her eyes still held a quiet fear. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. I pocketed the flash drive, its weight a promise and a threat. As I stood to leave, the bell above the door chimed, sharp and final. Outside, the air was crisp, smelling of autumn and possibility. I drove home, the flash drive burning a hole in my pocket, my mind racing with questions. Could I trust Claire? Could I trust myself to dive back into a fight that had already broken me once? At home, I plugged the drive into my laptop. The screen's glow harsh against the dim room. Files spilled open, emails, spreadsheets, memos. Claire hadn't leaked. It was all there: names, dates, dollar amounts. Evidence of bribes, cover-ups, and the deliberate smear against me. My hands shook as I scrolled, the truth a wildfire spreading through me. This was my chance to reclaim my name, my purpose. But it meant working with Claire, letting her back into my life, my heart. I closed the laptop, my breath uneven, the house silent except for the faint tick of the clock. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, a low, mournful sound. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive her, but I knew one thing. I wasn't done fighting. Not yet. The laptop screen burned my eyes, each file a shard of glass cutting deeper into the past. I sat in my living room, surrounded by the familiar, faded couch, coffee mug with a chip in the rim, the faint hum of the fridge, but nothing felt safe anymore. The flash drive had unleashed a flood. Emails detailing the board's threats, financial trails of hush money, and a memo from Claire herself, dated the day she buried my story. Neutralize Ellie Harper's report. Protect Pinnacle at all costs. Her words, clinical and cold, stared back at me, a betrayal in black and white. I shoved the laptop away, my breath hitching, the air thick with the scent of dust and old books. The clock read 3:47 p.m., the afternoon light slanting through the blinds, casting stripes across the floor. I wanted to call Claire, to scream, to demand why she'd kept this from me even as she begged for forgiveness. But my phone stayed silent, heavy in my hand. Instead, I paced, the hardwood creaking under my steps, my mind a battlefield of rage and longing. By dusk, I couldn't stand the quiet. I grabbed my jacket and drove to the park where we used to walk back when love was easy. The air was sharp, carrying the earthy smell of fallen leaves and the distant bark of a dog. I sat on a bench, the wood cold against my thighs, and pulled out my phone. Claire's number stared back at me, a ghost from a life I tried to forget. My thumb hovered, then pressed call. Ellie. Her voice was soft, hopeful, tinged with the rasp of someone who hadn't slept. The sound of it sent a shiver through me, like the first note of a song you used to love. I read the files, I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. All of them. Silence stretched, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves skittering across the path. And? She asked, barely a whisper. You wrote the memo, Claire. You told them to neutralize me. How am I supposed to trust you after that? Her breath caught, a ragged sound that carried across the line. I was terrified, Ellie. They had me cornered, my family, my career, everything. I thought I was saving us both. I was wrong. I know that now. Stop saying you were wrong. I snapped, my voice echoing in the empty park. A jogger glanced my way, then hurried past. You don't get to just apologize and make it okay. You chose them over me. I know, she said, her voice breaking. I live with that every day. But I'm here now, trying to make it right. I'll do whatever it takes, go public, resign, anything. Just tell me what you need. I closed my eyes, the cool air stinging my face. What did I need? Justice? Revenge? Her? The truth was a tangle I couldn't unravel. I need to do this my way, I said finally. If I write this story, it's mine, not yours. You don't get to control it. Deal, she said, relief flooding her voice. I'll back you, no strings attached. I hung up, my heart pounding, the park fading into twilight. The next day I started working. My tiny home office smelled of coffee and determination. The clack of my keyboard, a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. I dove into the files, cross-referencing names, dates, transactions. The story was bigger than I'd imagined. A web of corruption stretching beyond Pinnacle, implicating politicians, investors, even law enforcement. My pulse raced as I wrote, the words pouring out, raw and unflinching. Claire called daily, offering context, encouragement. I kept her at arm's length, but her voice, steady, earnest, chipped away at my walls. One night, she showed up with takeout, her smile tentative, her eyes searching for a crack in my armor. We ate in silence, the crunch of fried rice and the hum of the TV filling the space between us. When she left, her hand brushed mine, a fleeting warmth that lingered long after she was gone. By the end of the week, I had a draft. It was rough, but it was mine. A blade sharp enough to cut through Pinnacle's lies. I sent it to Claire, my stomach in knots. Her reply came hours later. It's perfect. Let's do this. But as I stared at the screen, doubt crept in. This story would destroy her career, her life. Was I ready to pull the trigger? And if I did, could I live with losing her again? The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, a warning of the storm to come. I poured a glass of wine, the sharp tang grounding me as I weighed my choices. The truth was my weapon, but love was my weakness. And Claire, damn her, was both. The draft sat on my desk, a stack of printed pages heavy with truth and consequence. I traced my finger over the title, Pinnacle's Fall. A web of corruption, the ink smudging slightly under my touch. The house was quiet, save for the faint drip of the kitchen faucet, each drop a countdown to the moment I'd have to decide. Publish or walk away. The air smelled of ink and the lavender candle I'd lit to calm my nerves, but nothing could quiet the war in my head. Claire's face kept creeping into my thoughts, her eyes raw and pleading that night on my porch, her voice steady and sure, promising to stand by me. I hated how much I wanted to believe her, how her presence still warmed the edges of my cold resolve. The memory of her hand brushing mine over takeout lingered, a spark I couldn't douse. But trust? That was a bridge half burned, and I wasn't sure I could cross it. I called my old editor, Sam, the only one who hadn't blacklisted me after the scandal. His gruff voice answered, the sound of a newsroom buzzing in the background, typewriters clacking, phones ringing, the chaos I used to thrive in. Ellie Harper, he said, a smile in his tone. Didn't think I'd hear from you again. I've got a story, I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my throat. Big one. Pinnacle Media's parent company, corruption, bribes, the works. I've got proof. He whistled low, the sound sharp through the phone. You're playing with fire, kid. You sure you want back in this game? I glanced at the draft, the words a lifeline and a landmine. I'm sure. We met at a dive bar downtown, the kind with sticky floors and neon signs flickering like they were on their last legs. The air smelled of beer and fried onions, and Sam's weathered face lit up when he saw the files. Jesus, Ellie, he said, flipping through the pages, his eyes wide. This is dynamite. But you know what this'll do to you. And to her. Her. Claire. I nodded, my throat tight. I know. Back home I paced, the hardwood creaking under my steps, the night pressing against the windows. I texted Claire. Meeting with an editor tomorrow. You still in? Her reply was instant. All in. Whatever you need. My heart twisted, caught between gratitude and fear. She was risking everything, her career, her safety, maybe her life. And for what? Redemption. Me? The next morning we met at the diner again. The familiar buzz of the neon sign greeting me like an old friend. Claire looked different, sober, sharp, her suit crisp but her eyes heavy with something unspoken. The smell of coffee and bacon wrapped around us as we slid into the booth, the vinyl squeaking under my jeans. I read your draft, she said, her voice low, careful. It's brutal. Honest. Everything I deserve. I studied her, searching for a lie but found only vulnerability. You're okay with this? It'll ruin you, Claire. The board, the media, they'll tear you apart. She leaned forward, her hands clasped, knuckles white. I've been running from this for too long. If this is what it takes to make things right, I'm ready. For you. For us. The word us hung in the air, fragile and dangerous. I wanted to reach for her to bridge the gap, but the weight of her betrayal held me back. The jukebox played a slow, mournful tune, its notes weaving through the clatter of dishes. I don't know if there's an us anymore, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But I need you to be honest. No more secrets. She nodded, her eyes glistening. No more secrets. I swear. We spent the day refining the story, her insights sharpening the edges, filling gaps I hadn't seen. Her presence was electric, familiar, like slipping into an old jacket that still fit perfectly. By evening, the draft was ready, tight, explosive, undeniable. I sent it to Sam, my heart pounding as the email left my outbox. No turning back now. That night, Claire stayed late. The two of us hunched over my laptop, the glow casting shadows across her face. The house smelled of pizza and possibility, the silence between us heavy but not uncomfortable. When she stood to leave, her hand lingered on my shoulder, warm and steady. "Thank you," she whispered, her breath soft against my ear. "For giving me a chance." I didn't reply, but as the door closed behind her, the quiet felt different. Less like a void, more like a space waiting to be filled. Outside, the crickets sang, a chorus of hope and hesitation. The story was out there now, a spark in the dark. And whatever came next, ruin or redemption, I knew I wasn't facing it alone. The story hit the presses like a grenade, the headline screaming across every major outlet by noon. Pinnacle Media's collapse. Corruption exposed. My name, Ellie Harper, was back in black ink, no longer a footnote but a byline, bold and unapologetic. The air in my house felt electric, charged with the buzz of my phone as texts and emails poured in. Colleagues I hadn't spoken to in years, sources, even strangers, everyone had an opinion. The world was watching, and I was at the center of the storm. I stood in my kitchen, the smell of burnt coffee lingering as I scrolled through the fallout. Social media was a wildfire. Pinnacle scandal trending. Claire's name dragged through the mud alongside the boards. Her face, poised, professional, was plastered across news sites. Her title as CEO now a scarlet letter. My chest tightened. I'd wanted justice, but seeing her unravel like this stung in ways I hadn't expected. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent, pulling me from my thoughts. I opened it to find Claire, her face pale, eyes shadowed but fierce. She held a bottle of wine, her smile tight, like she was bracing for a fight. "Thought we could celebrate," she said, her voice dry. "Or mourn. Your call." I let her in, the air between us thick with unspoken words. The house smelled of dust and the faint tang of her perfume, a scent that still made my heart stutter. We sat on the couch, the wine untouched, the TV muttering in the background. News anchors dissecting the scandal, my words echoing through their mouths. "You did it," Claire said, her voice soft but steady. "You took them down." "We did it," I corrected, meeting her gaze. Her eyes held a mix of pride and pain, and for the first time, I saw her not as the CEO or the traitor, but as the woman who'd loved me, flawed and fighting. "But it's not over. They'll come for you now." She nodded, her fingers tracing the edge of the couch, the fabric worn from years of use. "They already have. I got a call from the board this morning. I'm out. Effective immediately." The words hit like a punch, stealing my breath. I'd known this was coming, but hearing it, seeing the weight of it in her slumped shoulders, the way her hands trembled, made it real. "Claire, don't," she cut me off, her voice sharp but not unkind. "I chose this. I knew the cost." She paused, her eyes searching mine. "What I don't know is where we go from here." The question hung heavy, the hum of the TV fading into a distant drone. I wanted to answer, to say something that would bridge the gap between us, but the scars of her betrayal still burned. "I don't know either," I admitted, my voice raw. "But I'm glad you're here." Her smile was small, fragile, like a crack in glass. "Me too." The next few days were a blur. Interviews, follow-up articles, calls from outlets begging for exclusives. The world wanted more, and I was ready to give it. But Claire was a shadow, always there. Bringing coffee, reading drafts, her quiet support a lifeline I hadn't realized I needed. One night, as we worked late, the air thick with the smell of ink and Chinese takeout, she reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. Her touch was warm, familiar, a tether to the past I'd tried to bury. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking the silence. "For everything." I know I can't fix it, but I'll spend my life trying. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the woman I'd loved. The one who'd laughed with me in Montauk, who'd believed in my fire before I believed in myself. The hurt was still there, a dull ache, but so was something else, hope, stubborn and unyielding. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said, my voice steady but soft. But I want to try. Her eyes filled with tears and she squeezed my hand, the gesture small but seismic. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows, a reminder of the world waiting to judge us. But in that moment it was just us, two women broken but rebuilding, one careful step at a time. The scandal grew, new evidence surfacing daily, and I kept writing, my voice stronger with each word. Claire stayed by my side, no longer the CEO but something more. A partner, flawed but fighting. And as we faced the storm together, I realized the truth wasn't just about exposing Pinnacle. It was about us finding our way back, not to what we were, but to something new, something stronger. The weeks blurred into a frenzy of headlines and hearings. Pinnacle's board was crumbling, executives resigning, lawsuits piling up like leaves in a storm. My story had ignited a fire, and the world was watching it burn. My inbox overflowed, editors offering jobs, sources leaking more dirt, strangers calling me a hero. But hero wasn't a word I recognized anymore. I was just Ellie, piecing myself back together, one word at a time. Claire moved into a small apartment downtown, her penthouse a casualty of the scandal. I visited her there, the air smelling of fresh paint and cheap coffee, a far cry from her old life. She was different now, quieter, softer, her sharp edges dulled by loss. But her eyes still held that fire, the one that had drawn me to her years ago. We'd sit on her thrift store couch, papers spread across the floor, working through new leads, our voices mingling with the hum of the city outside. One night, as rain tapped the windows, she handed me a letter. Her hands shook, the paper creased from being folded and unfolded 100 times. "Read it," she said, her voice barely above the patter of the storm. "Please." I unfolded it, the ink smudged in places, her handwriting jagged but deliberate. "Ellie, I've written this 1,000 times in my head, but words aren't enough. I broke you and I broke us. I was selfish, scared, and I'll carry that guilt forever. But you're the strongest person I know, and if you let me, I'll fight for you, for us, until my last breath. Claire." My throat tightened, the words blurring as my eyes stung. I looked up and she was watching me, her face raw, vulnerable, like she'd stripped herself bare. The rain grew louder, a steady drumbeat, and I heard my own heartbeat, fast and unsteady. "Why now?" I asked, my voice thick. "Why keep fighting for this?" "Because I love you," she said simply, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "I always have. And I know I don't deserve you, but I can't stop hoping." The air felt heavy, charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. I wanted to push her away, to cling to my anger, but it was slipping, melting under the weight of her honesty. I reached for her hand, her skin warm against mine, and for the first time in years I didn't feel alone. We kept working, our partnership growing stronger as the scandal deepened. New evidence emerged. A whistleblower from Pinnacle's legal team, more documents confirming the board's threats against Claire. I wrote follow-up pieces, each one sharper, my voice finding its edge again. Claire testified at a hearing, her voice clear and unflinching as she laid out the truth, her career a distant memory but her resolve ironclad. Watching her, I felt a swell of pride, and something deeper, something I wasn't ready to name. One evening we walked through the park, the air crisp with the promise of winter, the crunch of leaves under our boots a steady rhythm. The scandal had quieted, the world moving on to the next crisis, but we were still here, navigating the wreckage. Claire stopped by the bench where I'd called her weeks ago, her breath visible in the cold air. "Do you think we can ever go back?" she asked, her voice soft, almost lost in the wind. "To what we were?" I looked at her, the woman who'd broken me and built me back up, her face lit by the fading light. "No," I said, my voice steady, "but maybe we can build something better." Her smile was small but real, and she reached for my hand, her fingers lacing through mine. The park was quiet, the world holding its breath, and for the first time, I felt the weight of the past lift just a little. We weren't fixed, not yet, but we were moving forward together. Back home, I opened my laptop, the glow casting shadows across the room. A new email from Sam, job offer. Senior reporter. You in? My heart raced, the fire I'd thought was dead roaring back to life. I glanced at Claire's letter still on my desk, its words a promise and a challenge. The future was uncertain, but it was ours to write, one story, one moment, one fragile step at a time. Spring came quietly, the town blooming with dogwoods and the soft hum of renewal. I stood in my new office at the Chronicle, a corner desk cluttered with notes and coffee cups, the air smelling of fresh ink and ambition. The job offer from Sam had been a lifeline, pulling me back into a world I'd thought I'd lost. My byline was everywhere now, each story a brick in the foundation I was rebuilding. But it wasn't just my career that was healing, it was me. Claire and I had settled into a rhythm, not the fevered passion of our past but something steadier, more honest. We'd meet at the diner most mornings, the clatter of dishes and the buzz of the jukebox our backdrop as we talked about the scandal, our lives, the future. Her new job at a nonprofit was a far cry from her CEO days, but she carried it with a quiet pride, her laughter brighter than I remembered. The smell of her coffee, the way her hand brushed mine when she passed the sugar. It was familiar but new, like a song relearned in a different key. One morning as we sat in our booth, the sun streaming through the window, she slid a small box across the table. My heart stopped, the air thick with the scent of pancakes and possibility. It's not what you think, she said quickly, her smile nervous. Just open it. Inside was a key, simple and silver, glinting in the light. To my place, she said, her voice soft. I'm not asking you to move in. Not yet. But I want you to know you have a place with me. Whenever you're ready. I stared at the key, its weight heavy in my palm. A symbol of trust one wasn't sure I deserved. The diner hummed around us, the world moving on. But in that moment it was just us. I'm not ready yet, I said, my voice steady but warm. But I'm getting there. She nodded, her eyes bright with understanding, and we finished our coffee in comfortable silence, the key a quiet promise between us. The scandal had faded, but its ripples lingered. Pinnacle was under new management, the corrupt board dismantled, and my name was clear. I'd won awards, fielded offers from bigger outlets, but I stayed at the Chronicle where the work felt real, grounded. Claire was there through it all, not as the CEO who'd ruined me, but as the woman who'd fought to make it right. One evening we drove to Montauk, the ocean a dark expanse under the stars. The air smelled of salt and memory, the crash of waves a steady heartbeat. We walked along the beach barefoot, the sand cool beneath our feet. This is where it started, Claire said, her voice soft, almost lost in the wind. You and me. And where it broke, I added, but there was no venom in my words, only truth. She stopped, turning to face me, her face lit by the moon. I know I can't erase what I did. But I'm here, Ellie. I'll always be here. I looked at her, the woman who'd shattered me and helped me rebuild. And I felt the last of my anger slip away, carried off by the tide. I know, I said, and I meant it. I took her hand, her fingers warm and sure. And we stood there, the ocean singing its endless song. Back home I sat at my desk, the key on its chain around my neck, a quiet weight against my chest. I opened my laptop, a new story taking shape. A piece about redemption, about love that survives the wreckage. The words flowed raw and real, each one a step toward the future. Outside the night was still, the crickets silent, but inside my heart was loud, beating with purpose, with hope. Claire wasn't my ending, but she was part of my story. A story of breaking, healing, and starting again. And as I wrote, the world felt wide open, full of second chances, ready for us to claim.